Hi, it's Jackie with Panama Relocation Tours. Thank you so much for joining us for our Saturday live stream. Today, our guest speaker is Janine, and she's going to share a very interesting story about what led her to move here to Panama. We'll bring her on in just a couple of minutes. First, I have a couple of announcements to make, and I want to give a background about who I am and what Panama Relocation Tours is for the benefit of those that are new to our channel. So my name's Jackie Lang, and in 2010, I started Panama Relocation Tours quite by accident. I'd been here, I'd visited Panama, and I decided I was going to move here. When I told my friends about it, I was a real estate investor in Texas. When I told them I was moving here, they were saying, I've been thinking about moving overseas somewhere. Why'd you pick Panama? What's so great about it? And I said, you just have to see it to understand. So in 2010, I organized a little tour for 8 real estate investor friends. And then that led into other people asking me about tours and other people asking me about tours. So I started a tour company in 2010 called Panama Relocation Tours. We offer all-inclusive 6-day, 7-night tours that go all the way across the country. We just finished tour number 214. So we have a lot of experience, and we've helped thousands and thousands of people move to Panama the easy way and the right way. So that's a little bit of background about me. I have 3 announcements that I want to make before I bring on our guest speaker. The first announcement is that on Tuesday, I'm going to release, I believe it's going to be Tuesday, it might be Wednesday. I'm going to release a new video about El Cangrejo area in Panama City. You don't want to miss that video. So if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm just going to go live with it as soon as it's ready. So you'll be the first one to know when it's live if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. My second announcement is, once a month we do our Retire in Panama Q&A calls, and I've been doing those, for 13 years now. We did calls at first, and now I do live streams. And sometimes those turn into marathons where it's just hundreds and hundreds of questions that are being asked, and often it's the same questions over and over again whenever we do different Q&A calls because people weren't on previous calls. So I'm going to change, and it's a little bit hard to get through all the questions that come in and all the answers, and I don't have enough time to spend a lot of time on just one question. So I'm going to change the format just a little bit. Starting next Saturday with our Retire in Panama Q&A call, I'm just going to cover 1, maybe 2 topics in a lot more detail. And then there's going to be time for your questions about that one particular topic. So what I need for you to do is send an email and let me know what you would like that topic to be. This is where you need to send the email to. It's info@panamarelocationtours.com. And if you will just, in the subject line, write Q&A topic, and then let me know what you would like the topic to be that I cover. And I'm going to look through all of the things that are submitted, and I'll pick 1 or 2 that I'll cover next Saturday. At the same time, 5 o'clock next Saturday, I'm going to do our Retire in Panama Q&A call, but it's only going to be about 1 or 2 topics instead of hundreds like we usually do. And then my third announcement that I have, let me change this just a little bit. Okay, hide that. All right, my third announcement is right after this live stream on our Facebook page for Panama Relocation Tours. I'm going to put information about a doctor in Panama, and I got his permission to do this. It's a doctor that I really recommend in Panama. I've talked to him many times, not about health problems because I don't have any, but we've just been in communication a lot. And he has agreed that he's been doing telemedicine since even before the pandemic. He does telemedicine to clients all over Panama. He also does telemedicine for people that are thinking about moving to Panama, and they're just a little bit unsure with maybe their pre-existing conditions. Can they be taken care of here in Panama? Are their medications going to be available in Panama? Are the specialists that they need available here in Panama? So he's offered, I've got his office number. I have his cell phone number, and I have his email, and he's offered to take your questions for a Panama doctor about moving to Panama. So it'll be on our Facebook page right after this live stream. So now, without further ado, I want to bring on our guest speaker, Janine. Hi, Janine.
Hi, Jack.
You can hear me okay?
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
So thank you so much.
Yes,
I'm glad that
you hear me okay?
Stable electricity and internet and everything this time, even though it is pouring down rain here in Boquete, but at least everyth's working real good. Keep your fingers crossed that we're going to be able to get.
I'm not in the Wi-Fi area, so I'm just praying. So,
okay.
You ready for me to give it a go? So
we're
just
ready.
In case anybody
Tell
wonders,
everybody, who is Janine? Where did you move from, and why in the world did you move to Panama?
Why Panama, right? Well, my name's Janine Fugere Teixeira, and I moved here from Colorado with my husband, Paul, a little over almost 2 years ago. But we began pursuing it in July 2020 during COVID. And the story goes back 10 years before, though, now. And that's kind of how this little synchronicity story comes up, because my first time in Panama was 2013. And I didn't even know Paul yet at that time. So a really cool thing happened recently, which Jackie knows about, that I saw a video she shared of another U.S. citizen who retired in Panama. And it was just like whoa, my entire last 10 years of my life came around full circle, because it was a person who I had trying to find again since my last trip here. I'll tell more about it in my story. So that was kind of a leaping stone to that trip. And even the experience at that particular, it was more the location, because I didn't really know who owned it. But so that's part of the story I'm going to tell today. And I've been here now. We're building the house you see behind me. This is a simulation, but this is our new house. We're in Puerto Armuelles. We are beachfront in a little development called Corazon de Oro. And we're the first people to buy there. A lot of people went one side, the other side, bought houses, didn't want to build. And we just said, let's jump in. So we've been building here since January 2022. Yeah. And we actually lost our home in Colorado in a fire December 30th, 2021, wow. 2 months after we put our dog on a plane here. So I'll tell you what, the simple thing was, I mean, yes, of course it was a trauma, but boy, did it simplify, like what to pack, what to bring. Do we rent the house? Do we sell the house? Who cleans up the house? Who rents, repairs the house? All that just taken care of. So anyhow, so that's some background. And but the story I want to tell you about today is a little bit more of kind of the spiritual story behind what got me to Panama. So as I mentioned, my earliest inkling that Panama might be the retirement destination for me came when I visited here in 2013. And this was made possible by another big synchronicity in the past. I had a trip planned to go to Alaska. I had been offered to go up in an airplane, a small flight plane, with a fellow photographer. I'm a serious photographer, professional at different times in my life. And I was offered a trip to fly over the Chugach Mountains in Alaska and take photos. And it was like, dream come true. The guy charges big money for it now. Back then I was going to do it free. But I ended up getting an intuition that I should reschedule that trip, because my 20-year college reunion at Gettysburg College was that weekend. And, glam trip to Alaska versus college reunion in Gettysburg, it would have been a no-brainer to go to Alaska. But one of my dearest friends, Rob, who is my son's godfather. He was my son's godfather. I'll get to that in a moment. And one of my best friends, Michelle, known as Mitchell, they were going to the reunion, and I had not seen them in almost 10 years. And so I just felt this strong pull to be there. That's an intuition that I'm extremely happy that I listened to, because sadly, Rob passed away 2 years later. And if I had not listened to that intuition and thought, there's some reason that I'm supposed to listen to this, and Alaska will happen another time, I would have missed the chance to see Rob before he passed Happy to say my son's godmother is still alive and well, and maybe even watching today. But that is not the only thing I would have missed, though. Things happen for a reason. I really believe that. That's the way I've always lived my life. I've been through a lot of difficult stuff, and every single time I've found the silver lining, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, all of it. I just really believe you can find a reason for things. And on my way home from Gettysburg that weekend in 2013, it was June. I got grounded in Dulles International Airport all day long. United Airlines was at that time in really bad shape. They're having a lot of problems with all their planes, and every plane in Dulles International was grounded for the day. Like, it was mayhem. And so big problems for United meant big problems for most of their passengers, unless you were me. I was fairly happy, actually. I was sitting around in their waiting room. I had recently launched my own professional photography website, As Seen by Janine, and I had been building my website over the past couple of years. And so, I'm just flipping through photos on my iPad and, making the best of it. What are you going to do? You can sit there and whine, or you can do something you enjoy. So I did something I enjoy. And then I noticed that sitting next to me was a fellow right beside me doing the same thing. He was looking at photos on his iPad. And so we struck up easy conversation. And he was substantially older than me. I want to say he was probably around my dad's age or a bit younger. I'm not sure. But he, really nice fella, and had great photos. And so we got to talking, and I learned that he was also a U.S. citizen. He was on his way back to Panama. He was retired in Panama. And I honestly, my initial reaction was like, Panama, really? Like, what made you retire there? Because I didn't really know anything back then about Panama as a really desirable, retirement destination. So he mentioned, obviously, it's a beautiful country, great place for photo opportunities. But his biggest reason was it's a very, very affordable place to live. It's amenable to U.S. citizens, and medical care, very affordable. So those were his big reasons. And I thought, oh, that sounds, all like good reasons. But at that time, I wasn't really anywhere close to retirement. And so I just kind of tucked that information away. We chatted more, and he mentioned that he was involved in a photography club. He lived in Boquete. And he said, I think my photography club would really love to meet someone like you who does a lot of different kinds of photography. You have a lot of skills in different areas. I am what's known as a generalist. I don't specialize in just one type of photography. I do everything from adventure photography. I mean, I'm the gal who's going to fly in a little plane over the Chugach Mountains in Alaska. I've taken photos from out in kayaks on Queen Charlotte Islands and Belize. And then I have done weddings and newborns, and I do high school portraits and landscape portraits. And then I also have been very involved in fine art photography, enlargements of landscapes and other beautiful works of art that either people have commissioned me for, or I was represented by a broker in Denver. So all of this led this guy to say, wow, there's people in the photography club would love to meet you. We'll pay to fly you down there. Now, this didn't all happen in Dulles. Some of this conversation followed in the next few days after the trip. They said, we would pay as the club to fly you down there. To this day, I'll never know if the club paid to fly me down or if the guy paid to fly me down. But they said, we'll fly you down. I was offered a chance to stay at his house with the assurances, no strings attached. And, I'm like, oh my God, do I take this up? I met this guy in an airport. And I asked him, would you mind if I do a background check on you? Because I'm going to fly to Panama on this whim, and I just kept having this feeling like there's a reason I should go. And so I actually got some of the best guidance about making the choice from my son's godmother, Mitchell, who I had just seen at the college reunion. She's like, Janine, if you don't go for the rest of your life, you're going to wonder. And, he's told you point blank, said, if you're not happy, if you're uncomfortable in any way, I will instantly convert your ticket. You can go home early, whatever you want to do. And I So I ended up deciding to take them up on it, or him up on it. And I went to Panama in July of 2013 after confiding with friends and family. And I decided to go. His background check turned out, except he was older even than I already knew. So I just, said, he's a great photographer. How bad can it be? And I went. So I took the chance. He again reassured me, if you're unhappy at any time, you can go home early. Well, as if once I got there, I would ever go home early. And anybody who's ever been to Panama and fallen in love with it knows what I'm talking about. Once I got to Panama, there was no chance that I would be leaving early. And even though actually I only stayed with the first host for about a week, I met a lot of other people that I had a lot in common with. And I ended up staying in a couple of other places, one in David. And I was already had fairly decent emerging Spanish, not great, but decent. And then I ended up staying at another place out in Playa Barqueta, where I got to stay in a beachfront casita that was off to the side of a house. That was a friend I met who was also from Colorado. I thought it was ironic. I had to go to Panama to meet somebody from Colorado. And he was working as a house sitter. And I thought, wow, even more than retiring, there's other ways you could go to Panama if you really wanted a new life somewhere. So there were a lot of reasons this was desirable to me, because I didn't see myself as somebody who might ever be able to afford to retire. I would have to work really long, and I wasn't sure if I could afford the lifestyle that I wanted. And so all of this was interesting to me. There were possible jobs in Panama I could do, or I could possibly afford to. The house that I stayed in Playa Barqueta, the following month or so went on the market for less than the appraised value of my modest townhome in Louisville, Colorado. And I was like, I should go there and buy that house. I could have that. And I couldn't, of course, because I didn't qualify for retirement, wasn't even close. As far as I knew, I had like 14, 15 years to go, something like that. So, but it really started to plant that seed. Maybe someday, keep this in mind. If retirement doesn't seem within reach in Colorado or any of the other places that I love in the United States, keep this in mind. So back to the trip, I really felt that was a launching point for me to really understand that I could possibly have a dream of even a beachfront home in Panama someday, something I never saw myself as in the category of people who could afford. But if you check out behind me, obviously I was wrong about that. Also, I really thought retirement was still very far away for me, or so I thought. When I was back home in Colorado after that trip, I went through my photos and I recalled one of my favorite parts about the trip. It was only on my second day in Panama, Jackie and I had been taken by my host up to a place in the mountains. I believe it was right outside Volcan. And at the time, what my memories of it were that I had been told it was either a national garden or some national attraction that people came to. It was only open one day a year. And I was kind of like, what kind of national park is open one day a year? But, it's Panama. What did I know? And I really, it was a blur. I was one day in Panama, extremely sleep deprived, but I was thrilled. So we had a great day that day, taking photographs of these gorgeous, gorgeous gardens and lush, landscaping and on the side of the mountain in Volcan. And I really didn't know any more information about where that was. Like I couldn't even really tag my photos. I tagged my photos, their metadata, where they were. I really dreamed of going back there, but I didn't really have any idea how. You can't just say, well, it's in the mountains surrounding Volcan, because that's a pretty expansive area. And, it could have been anywhere in those mountains. And I didn't know if it was private property or public property or what. And the fella who had invited me there and taken me there left Panama not long after that, pretty suddenly, if I understand correctly, decided it wasn't for him. And I lost contact with him. I don't know anybody else. So I'm sharing all that by way of explaining I really didn't have anybody to ask to establish where was that really cool place I had gone. And that was, up until recently. So again, I just kind of let it go because my retirement seemed really far away. I was only 52. I was not just a photographer, but also a professional special education teacher in Mapleton Public Schools. That's in the Denver area. And my teaching career didn't start until the year 2000. I was 40 at that time. And so I saw myself as somebody who was going to need to work until full retirement age if I wanted to qualify for a pension. And so all these dreams that I was coming across through these cool experiences I was having just got tucked away as mental notes. Someday in the distant future was how I looked at it. And I'd like to kind of help close the circle of what that all has to do with how I ended up on this live stream is that I'm going to give a few more teasers about my story. 2 years after that trip to Panama, the love of my life, I apologize if the dogs outside are barking. I'll give away something early. One of the things we love the most about Panama is animal rescue. We have adopted 4 dogs in the last year. So anyhow, 2 years after my trip to Panama, the love of my life came into my life, Paul. And it was through a series of miracle synchronicities. I'll get into more on that soon. When Paul finally came to move to Colorado with me from Connecticut, one of his last criteria for the move was he looked at me and said, we got to talk about something else really important. And I was like, we've talked about all big stuff. Like, what else could there be? We're both pretty far along in life. We know what we want. We know we're in love. He said, would you ever retire in Ecuador, Panama, or Costa Rica? And I got to tell you, here's all my mind heard. Panama. And I said, oh my God, my heart just went like boom, boom. He's the one. Mm-hmm. And that was it. He put his stuff in a car and drove across the country, like starting about a week later or a couple of weeks later. So over the next years, we found so much research supporting our decision about Panama that we started, really keeping it in mind. So I'll talk more about that soon. Third teaser is I was wrong about how long I had to work to retire and get a pension. And COVID had part to do with that, and a misunderstanding on my part about how the eligibility system works based on both age and years of service. I thought it was just years of service. That came up. So I actually ended up retiring at 58, and I'll tell the story of how that happened. So also, Paul and I really began our quest for Panama in earnest. We were very impressed. Now, mind you, this is thinking that it was years down the road. We were really impressed that Panama consistently gets rated, not every year, but very often, the number one place in the world to retire, not just for U.S. citizens or, between the Central American countries, but like all over the world. And so we were very intrigued by that, especially because I'd been here before and I already felt very confident I could picture myself living there. When we got closer to my retirement, we were actually quite impressed with Panama's COVID protocols. And I'll talk about that also, how that played into us getting here sooner. And I'll flash forward now to the present day, or the present time. It was about a month ago, a little more, if I recall, Jackie. And we were already here living our dream in Panama. And that's a major component of my soul's plan together. We're building the beachfront home, and we are almost finished. And then, we launched this dream. But since we've been here, many times we've been up to Volcan. And many times I've said to Paul, gosh, I wish I could remember where that awesome place was. I think you'd find it beautiful. We're both very avid gardeners, and we knew that we'd be wanting to landscape our yard. I know there's just a gazillion plants at that place that are, species I wouldn't even begin to know how to research. And but I just had no idea where it was. So this brings me to the day that I ended up being invited by you to do this story on a live stream, because I ended up watching a video that you had shared. And I now understand, I believe it was a couple of years ago that the video was published. But it was about a woman who'd lived in Panama for 30 years and a US citizen. And synchronicity must have led me to see that video at the time I did, because just that week I had said, oh, my son's coming. I wish I could remember where that place up in Volcan was. I want to show him, a wide variety of things, not just the beach. And that week is when I saw the video that you played. So I'll kind of share the story from here, exactly how I conveyed it to Jackie that day, because what happened when I saw that video blew me away so much. It was like, whoa, the entire last 10 years of my life just came around like, you are here and now. And what happened back then was totally part of it. And this video here is totally part of it. And so here's what happened. I wrote to Jackie and I said, oh my gosh, Jackie, as I began watching the video you shared, I had this hauntingly familiar feeling as I was watching it. And seeing it became especially familiar during one of the scenes. There was a really beautiful lily pad garden. And I thought, oh, that's really like that lily garden I photographed in Panama, and then I was like, oh, please, there could be, 100 of those. Who don't be silly. But the one lily pad, and honestly, I'll see if I can get it on the screen. I was like, I think that's the one I photographed, and I'm sure she probably had thousands since then, but I saw this lily pad. And then I'm like, don't be ridiculous. And, often I'll have intuitions and I tend to question them. But so I kept watching, it's not the place, just move on. And then it started to get even more familiar when there was a camera angle. And I'm just checking my notes here. Yeah, I basically knew there could be ponds like that anywhere. And I didn't have anybody to ask if this could be the place. But I saw that view and it brought back the whole flood of memories. And I just started feeling like there's something going on here, but no, I'm imagining this, but there's a reason I'm watching this. And boy, that lily pad pond looks just so familiar. And then I couldn't believe my eyes, because the camera panned around the lily pond again. And I saw this metal sculpture of a musician that had been made out of a variety of different metal parts. And I just couldn't believe it. And then I thought, no, that's not it. And then the camera panned to a place where some people were eating, or it was what looked like a home. And there was a picnic table on the back porch. And I thought, that looks like the place that we ate that afternoon. I don't know if it was something that was part of the special event that was going on that day, or if it seemed like we were there with some of the gardeners of the property. I don't remember much. I honestly don't even remember, well, let me take it from the perspective of the day I'm watching the video. I didn't remember if I had met the people who owned the property or not, although I thought maybe I had met the husband, Carla's husband, Angel, and he's Panamanian, and they met each other in Washington, I believe. But I vaguely remembered a man who was Panamanian telling me either that he worked there or that it was his property. And in the video, I see the place. I'm like, no, the house is bigger than that place. And I didn't even make the connection that maybe they had added on to it. So I'm still doubting myself, like, no, this isn't the place. And then that's when the musician sculpture panned around again, and they showed the front view of it. And I saw this guy, and I was just like, oh my God, I have a picture of that. Like, that's the sculpture that I took a lot of pictures of. And I, take a lot of pride in my work. I spend a lot of time, doing, editing on them and, making all the little details special. So I really knew that musician guy well. And I said, there's not another one exactly like that in the world. There can't be. This has got place, and I just thought this, whoa, 10 years of one. And I
Yeah.
didn't know, I knew it was open one day a year. And I'm like, what kind of park opens one day a year? Now I
Twice a
understand.
year. Yeah.
Twice a
So
year now? Ooh, two chances. Well,
the property is owned by Carla Black and her husband Angel, and they open it up only 2 days a year. It's a private property. They open it up 2 days a year to sell plants and for people to view their incredible heliconia garden. And it
yeah.
just so happens, I'm going to put up a banner. It's going to be open on July the 1st and the 2nd, and this is the website. Heliconia Garden. Yeah, everybody can write this down. Let me see if I can bring the screen up. Hold on.
And I learned from her video that they sell plants also. And I think I
No
recall that.
plant. Yeah. Let me see if I can do this.
The heliconia was what my host wanted to photograph when we were going there. It was some exotic flower. And I don't know if I got a photo of that one or not. I have a ton of photos from their gardens, but so yes, I recall that. But so now I had learned, about a month ago that in fact it's a private property owned by a woman like me who decided to take a chance on living in another country. Her circumstances were different. She met a fellow who was Panamanian. He went to college in the States, and then they, later in life came here, or younger in life came here, I think, because they, if I understand, came here not as retirees, but like about 30, maybe 32 years ago now. So, but I was just so inspired. And I thought, this is so cool. I've not only learned where the place is, but I got really inspired by the story that the person, Carla, shared. She reminded me of what I felt, which is it's a chance to just explore so many different things. And I really admired her insights about immersing herself in the culture and a lot of different things. So if you have not seen that video of Carla's, Jackie, did you produce that video? Because it's really beautifully done. I don't know who produced that, but
yeah, we did.
It's wonderful. It's got what I think are probably drone views, and it's really nicely done. But it gives great ideas on why this particular couple decided to come back to his homeland, and for her, a new land, and why they stayed. So
let me recap
my visit
a little bit for the benefit of people that joined in a little bit late, because I know there were a few people that joined in late. So if you hadn't have gone to that reunion, you wouldn't have got to see your friend before he passed away. You would have never met the guy on the airplane that was looking at his Panama pictures, that invited you to come to Panama in 2013 to see what a beautiful country this is and share your photography skills with them. But you would have not seen that property and the beach house, which all inspired you to, you knew you needed to be here. Yeah, it was
and
just
chances are when I met Paul, the love of my life, and he said, would you move to Central America with me? How about Panama, baby? I might have said, are you crazy? Because I wouldn't have known what I knew because I had been there. And I had already made the decision. It was probably the most likely retirement destination for me. Now, I probably would have opened my mind to it because I am a very open and adventurous person. But, in the way that it was, rather because I had that experience back in 2013, it was like the final, I am utterly certain this guy is the man for me. Like I didn't ever have to figure out how would I ask him, would you ever consider moving to Panama, And so it was just then that we really knew. So Paul and I started really looking into it. We were genuinely in love. Everything about our relationship was based on a whole series of just unbelievable synchronicities that occurred between us. It's too many to talk about in the scope of this. But actually even began writing a book called Spiritual Soulmate Synchronicities. And it's not just the story about us, but it's the story about how if you pay attention to the energy around you or what experiences cross your path, you're very likely to find people who are your soul tribe. And so the subtitle of the book is Pay Attention to the Vibe and Find Your Soul Tribe. Sounds kind of hokey and out there, but all we really mean is you'll find people who seem so familiar that they feel like family or old friends that you've known for a really long time, or
Mhm.
possibly even in our case, that you determine, oh my God, I found my soulmate. But if you are not willing to be open to see that things that might seem like meaningless coincidences might be important, and you should at least pay attention, if not even follow through on them, then you miss a lot of these things. So that's kind of what the scope of this talk has been about, is how my openness to that and Paul's openness to that led us to each other, and also led us to be willing to consider Panama. So
Mhm.
all this time, we both still thought that my retirement was many years away, maybe about 14 at the time. Paul was already retired. So we decided, let's figure out ways we can pursue gardening here. We love gardening. We love a lot of other things, biking, line dancing, and just a number of things. And we set our sights for Panama after my retirement. And as far as our interest in gardening goes, we both, like Carla recommended, even before we retired, well, even before I retired, we tried something new, which is called tower gardening. And it's a form of kind of like hydroponic gardening, but it's called aeroponic because it's a water on, water off system. It's in a tower where you grow plants. You can either grow them indoors with grow lights or outdoors. And we became just like tower garden aficionados. We really fell in love with the system. We ended up teaching both adults how to use the systems for Boulder Valley Lifelong Learning. We actually taught a class in our home, and also we taught an internship for 3 years in my school district to substantial special needs students, kids whose parents were like, he's going to die. He won't eat anything but chicken nuggets and French fries. And I'm like, no, we've got this. And we had these young adults eating, salads and hot peppers and all different kinds of things. So we actually have one here in Panama. We shipped one ahead of time. And I think I mentioned, and if I didn't, the house in Colorado was lost in a fire right after we moved here. But the garage was saved and somebody rescued our stuff from the garage. We haven't been back since it happened. So there's some things that are in storage, and one of them is another tower garden. But what I don't have a ton of experience with yet is traditional gardening in Panama. So that's another reason why I was excited when Carla's video came up, because it's obviously a great source to learn a lot about different kinds of plants. Despite that it's in a mountainous area, many of the plants I'm sure will grow anywhere in Panama. So we're excited about it.
You might look on our YouTube channel. We have a video on there of my garden that I have in Panama, a huge greenhouse full of organic food. And I converted 1/4 of it into hydroponic just as an experiment, but the rest of it's just regular gardening, but in a greenhouse to protect it from the wind and the rain. So, now, but at your elevation, it's going to be a little bit different on what you can grow there. So it might do better hydroponically, and we just had tower gardens made here in Panama for $50 a piece.
Yeah. Well, we just owned them already, so we said we might as well bring them down. I don't want to talk about the shipping costs, but they were ours. They were really a system we were familiar with, and we kind of were excited about the idea of being the first people to use this specific system in Panama, because the Tower Garden company, which is owned by Juice Plus, they do not market tower. So anyways, I don't want to get off too much on a tangent about that, but we loved it so much that we actually began a website. We had a business name, Grow Strong with Wellness. And there's a lot of other things that are part of that, our dancing, our nutritional interests. So Jackie, this reminds me of how we were saying, if you don't pay attention, you might miss certain connections that are meaningful, because Paul and I never really sought you out personally because we didn't need a tour. We found our place and we knew where it was, and I'll talk about how that happened. We studied a lot of your materials, and matter of fact, I believe you're the person whose article helped us get our driver's licenses. But we never sought you out personally to go on a tour because we didn't need that. But yet here I am now, why I should click on this woman's video that she shared. And then lo and behold, you invite me to do this live stream. And now I'm learning that you're also really into gardening. And so
Mhm.
it's one of those things where you find like-minded people if you're just paying attention, and just saying, why might Jackie have, out of all the people who'd invited me to do something like this, why might it be her? So it's a really cool thing that happens. So we were doing our Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel. It has a tower gardening playlist. It also has a going down to Panama playlist. We might have like some 200 videos on there from the day we found our land to the present day. And this photo behind me is actually the thumbnail for our most recent video. We've been saying it's just a few weeks until it's done for about 2 months now, because this is Panama and things get pushed out and pushed out. But so we had each found it separately. And then, all of this, like we said, this is the point. It goes against all the advice you hear, like go there first, live in different cities, live in different ecosystems and everything. But I had been to many different parts of Panama. Paul had a lot of confidence in me and my, insights about it. He had been researching a tremendous amount about Panama. And as I said, we both have a very firm belief in trusting our intuition and believing things happen for a reason. And we couldn't get past the belief that there was some incredible plan in store for us, that we had both found the same place separately. So we called these people, we made a little deposit. And then when Panama did indeed open up to foreigners, and it was October 12th, 2020, we were, that day got our COVID tests, our pruebas. October 13th, we were on an airplane, left our dog home with a dog sitter. October 14th, we were driving through Panama from one end to the other, pretty much. Well, not the end, because we didn't go in Darien Gap, but from Panama City to almost Costa Rica, because we're about, I think, 15 kilometers from Costa Rica where we are. And by the 16th, we were standing on the land that we had both found. So another amazing thing happened for me at that point. I had been having a dream, a recurring dream, even since before I retired, that was a picture in my mind of Paul and me both standing on a beach somewhere, like standing on some land overlooking a beach somewhere. And I kept having this dream. Recurring dreams are not uncommon for me ever since I was really little. And when I stood on the front of this land, I looked, back and forth, in particular to my left for some reason. I just went, this is the place that's in the dream. I tell you, Jackie, I would have bought the land that day. Okay. I would have bought it that day, which is crazy, of course. Since my husband, it was his first time we were not married yet at that time, but we were engaged, we were committed relationship. I know that he needed some time to know that he felt confident. So we ended up staying a month and a half on that trip. And we went into David a couple of times. Paul was so happy at Puerto that he said, I don't really want to go into the city. That's not for me. So you handle, and you're the one who speaks Spanish, you handle all the legal stuff. By the end of that trip, we had made an offer on the land. We extended the trip twice, I believe. Originally, we thought we'd stay 2 weeks, and I was like, that's not going to be how it works out. But that's what Paul thought. He'd make a choice in 2 weeks. And then we extended that to a month, and then a month and a half. And by then he said, yes, let's buy this land. But he kept saying, at the very least, if we change our minds, it'll be a great investment. And I knew that we would not just have it as an investment. I knew that we'd end up living there, but I need to give him time to come to that conclusion himself. I knew we wouldn't change our minds, though. So we went back to Colorado, and we came back 3 more times in the same year. 2021. Yeah, 2020 and 2021. We came back in March 2021, and we bought the land. Then we came back again for another 2.5 months in June, July, and August 2021. And we rented a home, and we lived in the Kukui barrio which is way down at the end, land of slow internet. So I pray my internet holds up. And we we found a contractor, we found an architect. I worked my way through in Spanish the municipal permitting process. I found everything I needed for a titling process because it was right of possession land, which is another whole discussion for another day. But
Mhm.
we did the due diligence. We hired a really good lawyer who had lived here her entire life. We found out the history behind the property. We found out the history behind the owners and why this gorgeous beachfront property had been sitting here for 15 years and other people didn't buy it. And we learned it was really a safe investment if we did it the right way. And so I actually wrote our contract, and it had a lot of fail safes in it. There were things that the owners had to accomplish by certain dates. And so anyhow, we moved forward with the plans to complete the contract. We did. And we started working with the architect to plan the house that you see behind me here. And then I swear I would have never gone home. I would have just given it all up. And there was not a chance. I had a 13-year-old dog who was a professionally trained by me service dog that I used to work with special needs students. And I was trying to help some of my students obtain service dogs. So I got her certified to come to Panama with us. And we came back in October 2020 at the end of the month with our dog Kaya on the plane with us. Thank God we brought her because something her vet had misdiagnosed as liver disease, and they were treating her with anti-inflammatories. They were actually killing her liver, and they had missed that she had a tumor on her liver. Amazingly, she got such good veterinary care here in Panama that she ended up living 10 months here pretty happily and pretty comfortably. We opened ourselves up to the idea that we maybe should open up to adopting another dog. I felt I probably would die. Oh my God, love, another animal lover. I thought I would die when I lost Kaya. And then this little puppy crossed my path, and I told the young man who had the puppy in his hand, her nose was tinier than my fingernail, and I'm like pretty fluent in Spanish. I'm like, no es posible. I've got a dog that has cancer. I'm building a house. My house in Colorado burned down. I cannot adopt a dog. And I went home to our rental house crying. And Paul takes one look at her and goes, her name is Sunflower, which is the most important flower between Paul and me over the years. They symbolize hope. And we've subsequently learned they represent kind of the same thing in Panama, the light of the world or something like that, Girasol. So her name is Sunflower, and Kaya's soul sent her to us. And I'm like, okay, this is the guy who said, I don't really believe in that spiritual stuff anymore. I was like, you can't tell me that. That was the basis of our whole relationship. Now he's saying, go get that dog. Our dog's spirit sent her to us. So we adopted a dog a year and a half ago. And then one of the persons online is asking what are two of my top favorite things about Panama.
Yeah.
One of them is that there's a very strong culture of people. I don't know if it's my top two. It would be difficult to order them. But there's a very strong culture of people who are committed to helping with the animal wellness and welfare system here in Panama. There are various spay and neuter clinics. There are people who rescue, foster, have a bazillion dogs themselves or cats or whatever. And we became a part of that. So anyways, all of this,
Kelly has a question for you. She says, how do prices for building percent-wise compare to U.S. prices for building? Do you have any ideas about that?
I can't give a specific number except to say we bought our land in Puerto Armuelles, a 1/4 acre of beachfront property with 20 foot of footage, across the front. And it's 168 feet deep. So it's like a long lot because it's designed for a long Panama style house with a big, long open air wraparound porch. You're only seeing the front porch in this photo. It goes down quite a ways down the west side so that we see the sunset from the porch. And the land alone, when we were leaving Panama the previous March, we were sitting at a restaurant waiting to get our COVID tests to go back. And Paul looks and he sees this SUV for sale, and he goes, "Oh my God, we just bought beachfront land in Panama for less than a car," and an SUV. And I would believe our land in the United States, anywhere that I know of, would have been, at the very least, I'm just going to take a shot at it, $500,000 or $250,000. I think land and building a home on it, you'd probably be getting up into the at least $500,000. Plus, the thing is, you can't really even compare being able to get laborers who put things into such fine detail by hand. There's nothing prefabricated here. I know you can get that, but that's not what we did. So anyways, it's unbelievably more affordable to buy land here, unbelievably more affordable to build here. This would never have been possible for me in the United States. I had been a single mom for 21 years. I found the love of my life very late in life. I started a new career very late in life. I was like the least likely person to retire young and the least likely person to end up somewhere at beachfront. But because things are so affordable in Panama, and because the love of my life was also amenable to the idea, here we are. And we will own this outright. The home in Colorado, that's not the case. I have a mortgage on it, but we're going to sell that and be out from under that very soon. So the prices are much more affordable here. So everything came around full circle. I really loved that I found Carla Black's video. I really am so excited to have found a number of people who, Carla and Jackie and others through this forum who share my passion and my interests. And I just want to say I'm really grateful to all of you for, listening in and sharing my story about how synchronicities led to our soul's plan. I could give you a punch list of what our top favorite things are, and it's in no certain order. Do I have enough time for that, Jackie?
Sure, go ahead. We've got about 4 or 5 more minutes.
I won't elaborate. It matched our mission together, which was that we wanted to help people grow strong with wellness. We had no idea the people of Panama would help us more than we helped them. We learned a whole new way of life. This is one of the other things. The people are so open and so warm and have such an incredible, strong family values system that we loved that. There are opportunities to live in a blended culture with Panamanians. We loved that. That there are some people who really want a gated expat community, and there's plenty of opportunities for that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just isn't what we wanted. But we love that it's very amenable to U.S. citizens. It uses the U.S. dollar, which really simplified the monetary process. We didn't have to worry about exchange rates. Doesn't mean people can't come from other places and be okay, but you have to take a look at what your retirement dollars are compared to the U.S. and Panamanian balboa, or the U.S. dollar, which are the same.
It's easy to get a visa. It's easy to get a visa.
So for us, getting a visa was so easy because you only have to have $1,000 a month pension. And, I thought my pension was really, really low, but here my pension is actually considered pretty substantially, it's considered substantial. We also love that there's a lot of different ecosystems in Panama, and they're very close to each other. You've got the mountains, you've got the middle of the road, you've got cities, you've got beachfront, everything from tropical to places where, it's pretty cool. We went up to Volcan one time and we were chilly. We wore long sleeves, and I realized if we were going to camp up there, we'd need really warm clothes. So we love the tight bonds within communities. We found that we've learned this since I was there 10 years ago, but there are very tight bonds among various communities up in Boquete. There's very tight bonds amongst community members in Volcan. Here in Puerto Amuelles, there are some really incredibly great opportunities to be a part of volunteer activities, to work not just with other expats, but with other Panamanians who want to all work together to help make the town a better place. And so that's another thing that we really loved. One of the big things is we loved finding a beachfront area that was not only safe to swim and surf, which was not the case when I was in Playa Barqueta. It was much too rough. I didn't go in beyond my shins. Okay. And that was kind of scary. you can absolutely swim, surf, boogie board, kayak out on this ocean here. And the big thing was no hurricanes. And
Right.
all of our friends, when they were here in 2020, were like, oh my God, evacuate. There's a hurricane coming by. I'm like, nope, it's not going to touch us. And they're like, how can you be so sure? I'm like, they don't come here. They don't. Um, they say tsunamis could be a problem, and they do have tsunami evac routes posted, and tsunami drills are taught in the schools, I guess. But I think, if I'm not wrong, the only tsunami to hit here was a long time ago. But, it's just something to be aware of. We do have earthquakes. Our first day that we got here, somebody was like, uh-oh, earthquakes. And we're like, well, let's find out. And we actually experienced a pretty substantial earthquake, and that impacted us learning more about how Panamanian architecture is built and why. And we have a home that's entirely held together by an interlocked grid of rebar. Every single part of it in a earthquake moves together. We have no stress cracks in our home, and we've had a few earthquakes here since we built. So the home where we are living, it has some cracks because I think it's been here about, 30 years or something like that. But so we just got past that we didn't really feel that things that might be challenges at beachfront land in other places like California or, the southeast coast of the United States, hurricanes, we just didn't have to worry about that here. So we mostly just really loved the people, both the other people who chose to retire here and the Panamanian people. And we love that we've become, I am reasonably fluent in Spanish, although I always tell people, please understand, in Spanish, I explain, I speak and write Spanish much better than I comprehend. So, más despacio, por favor. Please, go more slowly, please.
Yeah.
But I'm able to handle anything. I wrote our real estate contract. I did our title application. We did, of course, have lawyers. But when the lawyer got our applications, he was like, "Ooh, this is very well organized." And I was like, "Ooh," kind of excited.
Mm-hmm.
Paul never spoke any Spanish before. He went into the city of David with our electrician and bought those ginormous concrete electric poles that are like for the supply into a development, not our poles, but the main delivery poles, because we negotiated that as part of our contract. So, he's holding his own with Spanish too. He's able to go and do things, sometimes with a Panamanian to help him, sometimes on his own. And he's doing great. He takes little tutorials. So it's just a dream come true for us. We have just countless things that we love about being here. And here we are. Our soul's plan came true for us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible story of how one thing led to another thing that led to another thing that led you to Panama. You listen to your gut, and your gut led you to where you're supposed to be. So it's an incredible story, and I want to thank you so much for sharing it with us. And I want to thank you everybody that was on the live stream listening to Janine's story. And you probably, all of you that are thinking about moving to Panama, you probably, if you think back, you probably have a similar story in some way. That what was that spark that put Panama in your radar to begin with? There was something that happened that put Panama in your radar. You probably weren't even, like me, I wasn't even thinking about Panama in 2007 or 2008, moving overseas. Are you kidding? I would have never thought of it. And then there's just this one little spark of something that happens that leads to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing that leads you to where you're supposed to be. And then when you get here, you think, this is where I was supposed to be all along. This was what's been missing in my life. So
I often feel like I must have lived in this culture in another life sometime. I have no other explanation for how it all felt so natural from the first time, and how I, excelled at Spanish, like from the day I hit the ground. I mean, I was not fluent in Spanish even remotely. It was really, really Spanish. So there's just something about you. You find your way to your place. And I would encourage everybody to ask yourself, what is it that you are even following Jackie's, streams for? What is it leads you to want to go on one of her tours? Pay attention to who's come into your life. What is it maybe that led you to listen to this particular stream or any of the others? Maybe re-listen to some of them to get ideas, because there are guideposts there for you, and you can find your way to do something that maybe seems insurmountable. Is really
calling you to Panama.
Yeah. Come on down to Panama.
Come on down.
Love the Shorty and Slim song, Come On Down to Panama. And one of the first things we did when we reserved the $1,000 deposit to save this land for us, because it was still COVID, was we took a picture of it and did a Zoom call, just ourselves at home, and sang the Shorty and Slim song, like a really silly version of it. And we still have it. It's like, this is our land. That's our palm tree. Blah, blah, blah. Come on down to Panama. It's crazy. But we did things like that to get ourselves feeling the joy as if it were already true. And now here we are.
We were already feeling the joy of being there. So thanks again for sharing your story. Just a quick recap. One of the things that really led Janine to wanting to come to Panama was Carla Black's garden. And Carla Black's garden is going to be open for those of you already in Panama on July 1st and 2nd. It's only open 2 days a year. This is the website that you can go to she'll be selling some plants. It has information about the plants she sells, how to get there, some beautiful pictures of the plants in the gardens there. So, even if you haven't moved to Panama yet, you might want to check out that website, because you're going to be just blown away with the incredible plants that she had. The first time I went there, I literally had tears in my eyes. It was just the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. It was just gorgeous. So it's just an emotional experience to go to her property for a lot of people, for you, for me too. I know, I understand. So Janine, thank you so much for sharing your story, and thanks to everybody for being on the live stream. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Janine. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Jackie. Take care.
Bye.